He is a master in this business. But you're not always going to see him in front of the camera. You're going to see him behind the channels that have billions and billions of views. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my friend, my brother, Jeremy Vest.
How's it going, everyone? Yeah, I like that. All right, my name's Jeremy Vest. I'm the Director of Marketing of VidIQ. How many people have used VidIQ in here? All right. We have over 1 million weekly active users now, and we are the Chrome extension for basically helping you become a better YouTube creator. So you definitely want to check us out. We do thousands of audits a week at this point, and really our whole goal is to help creators just make your lives easier. So there's really cool tools like the channel audit and all kinds of cool stuff. Now, the presentation I want to show you today is all about thumbnails. I'm a thumbnail nerd, so we're going to get really deep into like the science of thumbnails. We took 51,000 data sources for this presentation, and that's what you're going to see here. So I want to show you guys some pretty neat things. I'm not even sure if this data has ever been shown before. Maybe it has, but it's pretty interesting. So these are some data secrets out of, our millions of users, and it's going to be pretty interesting. I think you guys are going to get a cool thing about this. There's a whole genre of should I show a face or should I not on a thumbnail, right? And what we've found is you're about a little more than twice likely to rank better and have better click-through rates if you show a face. Now, you also want to make sure that the hero is always on the video. So if you're doing slime, it may not make a lot of sense to show a face. So you got to have common sense here. But when it makes sense to show a face, showing a big face can get you twice the views. The size of the face matters tremendously. So a large face is always going to do better than a small face or a medium-sized face. And the reason for that is eyes subconsciously are the window to the soul, and it's really difficult for people to connect to you unless they can see the whites of your eyes. So this is a good example of almost a perfect thumbnail, and the reason for it is the focus is PewDiePie, and what the channel's about is YouTube. So that's kind of the size of a face that works quite well. Believe it or not, the number of faces is a big deal as well. So we found from our data that 2 faces on a thumbnail is better than 1, and 3 and 4 and 5 is worse than 1. So 1 or 2 faces is the optimal amount on a thumbnail. How many people didn't know this data? Is this cool stuff? All right. So this thumbnail is extremely high click-through rate, and the reason for it is 2 faces are better than 1. So you see the size of the faces, the color in the background, a little bit of text. This is quite a good thumbnail. One of the reasons it's such a good thumbnail is because there's the 3 E's: eyes, expression, excitement, emotion. Well, that was 4 E's. But my point is this is the golden standard. So one of my dear friends, and I heard him just talking about him as well, Evan Carmichael, this is a near perfect thumbnail. And the reason for it is the hero is Tim Ferriss at this point. And the text, there's a lot of text, but it's not too overwhelming. You can see what's happening. And the size of the face is literally perfect. Now, we found some data. A lot of people say, hey, text on my thumbnails does better. Well, according to our data, it doesn't. In fact, I'm going to challenge you guys to, instead of using text at all on your thumbnails, to have a visual representation of what you're saying. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, then, So my point is, replace your text, do some data, do some tests, replace your text with other things that visually tell the story. Because the more you can visually tell the story, the more likely people are going to click on your thumbnails. So based on our data, we're seeing 0 text doing the best and less than 5 or 10 characters doing better, and then it just goes downhill from there. So less text typically does a whole lot better, but the caveat there is you definitely need to give someone a reason to click and have visual representations of what your video is about. We also found, this was really interesting to me, and going back to the Evan Carmichael slide, the black background slide with the orange text, we found that colors of thumbnails that generally are black do the best. Now, what blew my mind there is back like 3 or 4 years ago, this wouldn't have been the case. So 3 or 4 years ago, everyone had rainbow vomit thumbnails, all these colors all over the place. Your job as a YouTube creator is to stand out from everyone else on suggested on the right-hand side. So if you stand out from everyone else, then it doesn't matter what colors the background of your thumbnail is. Does that make sense? So your job is to stand out. So if everyone in your space has black, the last thing you want to do is a black thumbnail. And going back to Evan's thumbnails, these are phenomenal thumbnails. You can see what they are. They're bold and stark, and they're just easy to read. So the summary of this data is use 1 or 2 large spaces, limit your text when possible on thumbnails, and use dominant colors that work well for your industry. So if everyone's using purple, don't use purple. Stand out. As Seth Godin says, be the purple cow. Stand out from everyone in your industry. Now we're going to get into some more nerdy design secrets. I'm a recovering designer from back in the day. So we're going to have the 3 E's: eyes, emotion, and excitement. This thumbnail really represents that well, I think. And I was able to help Funimation go from about 500,000 subscribers to almost 3 million subscribers by using this philosophy. And the only thing we changed at the time when I was doing their YouTube strategy was the thumbnails here. So that's pretty exciting. So we went from 500,000 subscribers to almost 3 million in a few years, excuse me, just by changing their thumbnail strategy. Here's another example of the 3 E's. So eyes, excitement, expression, emotion, engagement. That's 5 E's. Now, colorful backgrounds. This is an example I was telling you about standing out from the crowd. So VidIQ, we're almost at 400,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. And this is our competitors and friends like Sean Canal here. And what we're telling you is the background color is not enough. You need to understand what your industry is doing and be different. So to me, on this slide, Brian G. Johnson with the red and yellow is actually doing better than anyone else on this slide because it stands out the most. Would you guys agree with that? Like the green one or the red and yellow one is standing out above everyone else? So does that make sense how you can apply that to your industry? Just make sure you know who and what their thumbnails look like so that you can just stand out above them. Now, a lot of times designers hate my philosophies here because these are ugly. And you can always win. You can break every rule I'm giving you today by being creative. Peter McKinnon is a good example. He takes beautiful pictures, and I want to click on those pictures. So it's not always about backgrounds and eyes and the 3 E's and all this stuff. You can always break all of these rules and have a deeper philosophy with creativity. Creativity always wins on YouTube, at least most of the time. So this thumbnail design, when I started at VidIQ here about 16 months ago, we had about 100,000 subscribers and about 1.2 million views. And when we changed our design to this, we went in 16 months to 20 million views and almost 400,000 subscribers. And the biggest change of the entire channel alone was thumbnails. So it works. We see this all the time with our customers. And I highly encourage you just to spend as much time as you do editing a video as to create a thumbnail philosophy for your channel. Here's a great channel. Together, combined, they have about 14 something 14 million subscribers. They have a lot of subscribers. And what they do best, it's not about the colors, it's not about the 3 E's. They just excite people to click. The biggest thing I can tell you to do is give someone a reason to click. Having emotion and excitement and expressions and backgrounds are great, but if you don't give someone a reason to click, if you tell people with text exactly what your thumbnail is about, then the odds are they're not going to click on it. What they do really well is they develop some type of intriguing, almost comic strip looking image to intrigue kids to watch their content. Here's an example Sean Cannell has done, and he's changed his design recently because the industry was going different colors, and he went where other people weren't going. So everything was busy, so he went really simplistic, and his click-through rate improved dramatically. Consistent pattern for branding. So one thing we believe in is, instead of multivariate testing and getting really nerdy with a specific thumbnail, I'm all about having the entire library, your entire library of content being similar to each other. Imagine a brand without branding. So if the number one source of organic traffic for you is the suggested on the right-hand side, the biggest problem I see with creators is all their thumbnails look completely different. Now, Peter McKinnon's thumbnails, they're just always pretty pictures. A lot of the times they're seasonally in the same tone of colors and shade. So I can tell it's a Peter McKinnon photo. But if you don't have photography all the time, if it's more of a brand, colors, logo, shape, typography, everything should be the exact same on your thumbnails besides the subject and what the videos are about. So everyone knows really quickly that our brand is blue and a YouTube icon typically, and it's very simple to see that our videos are VidIQ videos. Does that make sense to everyone? So if you don't have a brand, how are people going to know it's your channel on the right-hand side? If suggested videos is the number one source of organic traffic for most big channels, then you just have to have a brand. It has to be consistent. And I think consistency actually is more important than even having a good thumbnail. So I would even argue that crappy thumbnails that have consistency is better than having one good thumbnail. This is the design I did for Gillette about 6 years ago. I've worked with dozens of the biggest brands in the world, and this worked 6 years ago. The problem is, 6 years later, a lot of people do this type of design, so we no longer stand out, and we're no longer the purple cow, as Seth Godin says. So you have to keep on evolving. What's going to happen is you're going to make awesome thumbnails, people are going to copy you, and you need to keep on improving and making them better through time. I'm a big believer that when you take an awesome image and you shrink it down tiny, that it's going to look really ugly. It's going to be, the colors are going to be muddy. It's going to be really, really out of focus. So I'm a big believer of oversaturating and over-sharpening images to a point to where it almost looks ridiculous on your Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever you're working in, but really small, it looks great. So before I took over the strategy for YouTube for VidIQ, the top A was what we were doing before. Do you guys notice how important the 3 E's are? Having a big face, seeing a face this small, actually, it's just completely different. You can't see the whites of the eyes, you can't see the expression and emotion, and it just quite honestly doesn't work that well. Just this one change on our channel helped us grow 300,000 subscribers in a little over a year. So don't underestimate these little things I'm telling you. I promise you that they could make a phenomenally huge impact on your channel. Another thing is, besides oversaturating, I also recommend over-sharpening images, like a lot. Here's a thumbnail on my channel, and you can see the bottom right thumbnail has no sharpness on it. Compared to the bottom left thumbnail, do you see how much different visually it looks? So if you are fighting for competition on the right-hand side under suggested videos, and one person has a real sharp and crisp image, and you have a non-sharpened image, just it's almost fuzzy comparatively. So you're probably more than likely going to click on the left bottom image and not the right bottom image. So I wanted to show you how unbelievably important that is. Besides just having a face, instead of using a lot of text, like I was saying before, have visuals that represent what the video is about. Think of it like a comic strip, and your videos are going to do a lot better. Now, in this case, the images were text. Here's a friend of mine, Answers with Joe. He just crossed 500,000 subscribers. He's doing really well. And all he does is tell stories with his thumbnails. So he has his branding, and that's his face. The whole channel is about him, Answer Questions with Joe. But he tells the story of what the video is about so people have a reason to click on it. Don't underestimate the power of telling phenomenal stories in your thumbnails. It's extremely important. Here's another great friend of mine, Juggling Josh Horton. You know, the cheesier you get on thumbnails, the better stuff works. Let's just be honest. Like these cheesy arrows and the colors and the things that make people stop. Think of a thumbnail as a stop sign. So you're scrolling through YouTube and you're trying to figure out what to watch. If something's intriguing enough, you're going to stop and then look at the title. So think of your thumbnail as a stop sign and giving someone a reason to read your title. That's what you should aim for. These thumbnails do a phenomenal job to get people intrigued enough to read what the video is about. Here's a client of mine, Braille Skateboarding. I'm old, but I still skateboard. It's all right. And they have doubled their daily subscribers by increasing their storytelling in their thumbnails. So the more weird they get with their thumbnails, the bigger the faces they have, telling the story of what the skateboard video is about, the better they do. If you do like tutorials or food or something that is a DIY or how-to video, you probably want to show the results before people do it, because you're wasting people's time or not, right? And they don't know who you are. So by showing the end result, if you do that type of channel, then maybe that's the type of hair, tutorial they want to do for their daughter, and they're going to click on your thumbnail first. So if you do something in the how-to DIY space, always try to do the after the end shot, because it gives people a good perspective of exactly what they're getting into with your video. This is another good example of a friend of mine showing the end result of a woodworking project that he did, and it got a lot of click-through rate and a lot of views. It did really, really well. So when I'm in Photoshop and I'm designing a thumbnail, I always make it really, really tiny, like you can see on the very bottom right-hand side. And the reason for that is I want to see what it looks like really, really small. If you're designing really big, honestly, you're probably going to have a bad thumbnail because it may not be sharp enough. It may not saturated enough. The images or the faces may not be big enough. So always scale that image down in your editing program to make sure you know what it looks like extremely, extremely small. And again, giving a reason to click is kind of everything. It really, take away all my rules, giving someone a reason to click is everything. I clicked on this thumbnail a few weeks ago because it says Toyota lied. I want to know what Toyota lied about, right? Are they liars? What's going on? So if you don't give this nugget, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, give someone a reason to click, give intrigue, and don't give it all away. Again, think of it like a stop sign. You're getting people to stop. So immediately I stopped on this thumbnail, I read Toyota lied, and then I read the title. So if you can stop people in their tracks, they're going to click on your thumbnails. Mr. Beast does a phenomenal job with that type of thumbnails. So in the design secrets, consider the 3 E's. Use colorful backgrounds when it makes sense. Use constant design for branding. Oversaturate, oversharpen. Use visual storytelling. Show results if you're doing DIY. design small, and give a reason to click. Now we're going to quickly get into analytics secrets. This is where I get real nerdy and fun. So this was January 2018 when I first really started, right before I started VidIQ. We had an overall impression rate or click-through rate of 2.5%. Now, in the last 28 days, we now have 7.5%. So think about this. For the exact same videos we're making, for the exact same effort, we've basically got a 947% increase in views. So I'm going to show that again. So we started at a 2.5% click-through rate. We went to an overall 7.5% click-through rate. And literally for the same videos have a 947% view. Isn't that awesome? So that's the power of video. That's the power of thumbnails. That's what I want you guys to understand when you walk away from this session. Another thing I want you guys to know is when people say, oh, my click-through rate's 2.3% or my click-through rate's 8.9%, it's not the whole story. Until you click see more and you see where your click-through rates are coming from, you really don't know the story, because search is different than when Google.com serves your thumbnail. That's different than suggested. So every one of these sources are completely different from each other. And you can actually click on these sources and you can see the impression rate. So for example, in this case, the overall impression rate was 7%, but from channel pages, it was 8.7%. And from browser features, it was 7.4%. But from suggested, it was only 3%. And the reason for that is maybe it wasn't a good enough thumbnail because it was competing with all the thumbnails on the right-hand side. So don't just look at your click-through rate. Look at your click-through rate from traffic sources so you can really understand what that click-through rate means. Because I got a click-through rate of half of 1% one time, and I was ecstatic. And the reason I was ecstatic is the King of Random shared one of my videos on the community tab. Now, their audience isn't my audience, but they shared that video. So instead of just worrying about click-through rate, just try to make your click-through rate better. It doesn't matter about anyone else's. Again, I'm not a believer of multivariate testing, A/B testing, just to thumbnails. I'm a big believer of taking a template and applying it to your whole channel. So what a lot of people do, and YouTube's rolling this out this year or early next year, is they're rolling out a multivariate test per video. So you might actually be able to upload 2 or 3 or 4 thumbnails and they'll serve the best one. It's a cool idea, but imagine if every time you made a video, you were testing your global click-through rate, right? So don't get just too hung up on one video. Design forward and move forward with your channel. So every week you have an opportunity to get 1% better and increase your click-through rate. Google knows a lot more about your thumbnails than you think. A lot of people actually believe they can't read your thumbnails, and you're incorrect. So this is the Google Cloud Vision API, and they actually know quite a lot about your thumbnails. They know if this image is happy or sad or angry or surprised. They know if this is a man, but it's only 64% person, so I don't know how accurate it is yet. But it is 87% man. They know it's, faces, expression, skin, nose, chin. What's interesting, and I'm sure Daryl after me will talk a lot about this, is they actually know if you're in a store. They know what products are in the images. They know if there's a Colgate toothbrush or toothpaste behind you. It's getting very sophisticated, and I just want to make sure you understand that what you put in your thumbnails is critical to get viewed, to get watched. If there's something racy, like let's say I had a skin-colored shirt on, they may actually think it's adult content because I don't have a shirt on. So you have to be very, very thoughtful and purposeful with your thumbnails because they are looking at everything. They're even able to read my text that says motivation, and they got it spelled correctly most of the time, which is pretty interesting. They even know the dominant colors. So they can even tell me the colors in my thumbnail. How crazy is that? And one of the most important things, especially if you have kids content, they know, or they're learning, the AI is learning about, is it adult content? Is it medical? Is it violence? Is it racy? So YouTube and Google, they own this property, the Google Cloud Vision. So I promise you, they may not be looking at every thumbnail, but I promise you they can. And I would design your thumbnails like they already do. I definitely would do that. So the summary of this section is study your click-through rate. Always look, the see more button is your friend in the new Studio Beta. How many people use the new Studio Beta? How many people hate it? Wow, it's getting better. It's getting better. So always click the see more button all the time, and you'll like it. It's not a bad platform. Always look at your traffic sources through click-through rate, because if you're just looking at your overall, you're really missing half the picture for sure. Test often and plan like YouTube can already visually see everything in your thumbnails. And that's all I have. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.